Ernest. Ernie. Hello? Ernie. Ernie. Hello? Can't hear you.
Hello, Johnny. Hello, Walter.
Hello?
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Now
I can.
You can hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you perfectly.
You have to get the Gemara.
Ernie, it was a great day today. I enjoyed myself. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
I said it was a great day.
Oh, fantastic. Golf, unbelievable. Unbelievable day of golf. Unbelievable. So beautiful and good golf, too. Okay. We are on Samech 65 Amud Aleph. Rav Yehuda. Amekadish be'ed echad ein choshen lekidusha. If a kiddushin goes on in front of one aid, then there's no kiddushin. Even if both the husband and wife admit, yes, they were mekadesh, it's not a good kiddushin. Boy, my name Rav Yehuda. Shnei moedim mai. What about if they both admit? In v'lo rafya biyadeh. He said, yes. But it wasn't very strong. Sometimes we would say yes, sometimes we would say no. In velo. Sometimes he would answer yes, sometimes he would answer no. It was very weak in his hands. He didn't really have a clear answer. Harold, we're on 65A1. Rav Yehuda Makadish Be'ed Echad. Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel Makadish Be'ed Echad Ein Choshen Lekidusha.
It's 65A4, correction.
Oh, but I didn't, meaning A.
In the art scroll, A4.
65 Amud Aleph. So if the Kiddush
Yeah,
is,
but we halfway, we 3/4 of the way down the Daf.
correct.
Yeah,
So-
but so you have to tell George as well.
George, we're on 65.
I know where you guys are. I know
Right.
where you guys are.
Yeah, we're in 65. Rav Yehuda Makadish
Thank you.
Ein Choshen Lekidusha.
Yeah.
Boy, my name Rav Yehuda Shnei Moedim Mai. What if both admit that the Kiddushin took place? In velo v'rafi, but he would sometimes answer yes, sometimes no. Itmar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel Makadosh Be'ed Echad Ein Choshen Lekidusha. It's not a kiddushin. Afilu Shnei Moedim. That's the halacha. Esrei Rav Nachman. Ha'omer li'isha kiddushtich. A man says to a woman, "I gave you kiddushin." V'hi omeres lo kiddushin. She denies. Who aser b'krov yisrael? He may not marry one of her relatives because he claimed that he was makadosh to her. He muteres b'krov. His testimony cannot prohibit her from doing anything, so she can marry his relatives. So the Gemara analyzes this case. If there were two Eidim, if there were two Eidim that said there was Kiddushin, then she would also not be permitted to marry his relatives. If there's no Eidim at all, why should he be prohibited in her relatives? Where it's one aid and l'chora, we worry about the kiddushin. What do you mean? Ein choshen l'kiddushav. Here it seems we are worried. Versus Achmai Eskina, going to Omar law, it's a different case. Kidashtich bifnei ploni uploni. He said, I gave Kiddushin in front of Reuven and Shimon. They were the Eidim. And the problem is, Reuven and Shimon have traveled to China. We can't reach them. So then we worry that he cannot marry her relatives. That's the case. Hamagarsh's Ishto, person gave a divorce, Velana imo bepundiki. And we see them going into a room together in a hotel the night after he gave her divorce. So Beishamai Oimrim Einat Tzrichei Mena Get Sheni. We worry, well, maybe they slept together and he did it l'shem kiddushin. So Beishamai says he doesn't have to give her a get. Beis Hillel Oimrim Tzrichei Mena Get Sheni. Beis Hillel is concerned that maybe they had bia and the bia was l'shem kiddushin, and therefore he has to give her a second get. So the Gemara analyzes, hey Chidami, what's the case?
It's a strange case that Beit Shammai would go lekula and Beit Hillel would go lechumra.
Correct. Most of the time it's the opposite.
Most of the time it's opposite, correct.
Most of the time it's opposite. A good observation. So it's not absolute. It's in general, Beit Shammai usually is more mach. Well, let's see what really is the machlokas here between Beit Shammai and Beis Hillel. And okay, edim. So if there were edim that saw them have bia, well, my tamai de Beit Shammai. Why wouldn't Beit Shammai require a get? Ideleka edim, my tamai de Beis Hillel. Without edim as to what happened, why should Beis Hillel require a get? Elalav be'eid echa. We're talking about one aid. Okay. So maybe with one aid, Beis Hillel requires a get. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? Umoidim, they both agree, that means Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, that it's only when the divorce occurred after Nesuin, they were fully married, that there's a machlokas. But b'nizgarshim and ha'erisin ain't tzricha mena get sheni. If the man had only given her kiddushin and they hadn't had nesuin yet, which means they haven't had relations, and then they have the aid that says that they went into a room together, so nobody requires a get. They've never been intimate, so we're not concerned when they were living together as man and wife. So now they have an opportunity, they'll do it again. But since they're with Kiddushin only, Ein Libo Gaspa, we're not concerned. But if you're talking about one aid and we believe it, it should make no difference. You have an aid and you're going to rely on it, and it should make no difference whether the get was from Kiddushin or the get was from the Nesuin. So, yeah, there are edim, even two edim, but there's only edim that saw them go into the room alone. We don't know what happened there. We don't know if they had physical relations. Leka edibia. Beis Shammai Savri, lo amrinan, hein ede yichud, hein ede bia. We don't say just because there's edim that saw them have yichud, it implies that they had bia. Because of this concept of ein libo gaspa. The chazaka is that they're not having relations. Beis Hillel Savri, amrinan hein ede yichud, hein ede bia. We do say ede yichud is tantamount to ede bia. Means if you have enough time in that room alone where they can have bia, and we in fact rely on this at a wedding when we have ede yichud, we follow Beis Hillel, hein ede yichud, hein ede bia. Because Nesuin, we assume, is completed with Bia. Okay. Umoidim Vadai, bin is Garsham and Erisin, the lo Amrin and Heine Yichud Heine. But if they had only been married through Kiddushin, not Nesuin, then even if you have Ede Yichud, that doesn't imply that they had Bia. Mibnei Shein Libo Gaspa. Amr Visuk Bashmuel, Bar Marta Mishmedira. Hamikarish Beid Echad Ein Choshen LeKiddusha. There's Kiddushin with one aid, it's not a Kiddushin. Afilu Shnei Amodim, they both agree. They both admit. Amr Rav Huna. Hamikarish Beid Echad. Beidina Rabba Amri Ein Choshen LeKiddusha. A great Bezdin said you don't have to rely on the Kiddushin. Man Beidina Rabba, who was that? Rav, the Bezdin of Rav. Whoever gave Kiddush in front of one aid, Beidina Rabba Amri Ein Choshen LeKiddusha. We don't say there's any Kiddush. Man Beidina Rabba Rebbe. Masiv Rav Achadvoy Barabi. Rav Achadvoy asked the following contradiction. Shnaim Shabam Medina Sayam. 2 men come from China to our community. The Isha Iman, and there's a woman with them. The Chavila Iman, there's a package of goods with them, with these 3 people. Ze Omer Zu Ishti, V'ze Abdi, V'zu Chavilasi. One of the men says, this is my wife. This man is my Eved, and this is my package. V'ze Omer Zu Ishti, V'ze Abdi, V'zu Chavilasi. The other man says exactly the same thing. Says, no, this is my wife. And that other guy is my Eved. And that's my package. The Isha Oimeres, Elu Shnei Avodai. These 2 men are my Eveds. The Chavila Shali. And the package is mine. So the halacha is, Tzricha Shnei Gitin. Each man has to give her a get. The Govek Subasim and Achavila. And she collects her ksuba from the package. Hey Chidami, what's the case? Idi Islay Sari Lahai, Vislay Sari Lahai. If each man has their own 2 witnesses testifying that she is their wife, Mimatzi Amra Elu Shnei Avodah V'Chavila Shali, then we would never believe her to say that these 2 men are my avodim. Elalav be'edecha. These people only had one aid. V'tizbara eid echad v'achoshem imemen. When you have an aid and no one contradicts him, so eid echad is neman in certain things, like Isurim. But not when there's somebody that's arguing with what he testified. The other aid is makhish, what this guy said, and we wouldn't believe him. Ela lemishri la'alma, kulam lo pligi d'shari. To say that she's allowed to marry everybody, and there's no machlokas, she's permitted, even that they haven't given her a get. V'acha hachi kamar. Why do we need Gittin? They don't need Gittin to free her. Because we don't believe the aid. It's only one aid. And there's Hakosha. But she wants to collect the Ksuba. She only gets a Ksuba if she gets a get. And this is Rav Meir, Sha'omar, Af Metaltali Mishtabdi L'Ksuba. That not only is land a support for the ksuba, but even dvarim metaltalim are. So if she wants to collect from the chavila, she needs a get. My havi Allah. What about the final answer to our question about kiddusha with one aid? Rav Kana Omar ein choshen l'kiddusha. We're not choshesh. Rav Papa Omar choshesh. Amar Rav Kana. My daitcha. Why do you say ein choshesh? the Yalef Dover Mimamoin, that it says Al Pishnei Edim O Al Pishloshadim Yakum Davar. Malahalan Hodas Baldin Kamea Edim Domi. When one of the litigants confesses, it's as if it has the power of 100 Edim. Afkano does Baldin Kamea Edim Domi. If they both agree, that means the husband and the wife, that they were Kiddushin, it's like Hodas Bezdin. So Armele, no, Hasam Loiko Chayiv Lachrini. I'm not Chayish Likidushin because over there, when a guy admits, yeah, I owe you $100, he doesn't damage somebody else. Here, if we say it's a Kiddushin, so he can't even marry their relatives. So it's goyrem a liability for other people, so we can't rely on it.
I think it's more that she's also asur to other people also. It's not that he's asur.
No, he becomes usher and her relatives.
No, but she becomes asur to the whole world. She becomes asur to the whole world. That's even worse.
No, but Rav Kahana said, "Ein chosheshin lekidushin," so she's not usher to anybody. So
but
Rav Ashi said to Rav Kahana, "Why do you say ein chosheshin in dvarim b'mamoin? If a person admits to, I owe you $100, so it's like having 100 witnesses. So why we're talking about a case where there was one aid to the kiddushin, but the man and the woman both said yes, we were makadesh, so they admitted to the kiddushin."
Yeah,
so,
I understand the case, but I'm just telling you, I understand the case. But her issur is much greater. She can't marry anybody else if they say that. And he can't marry her relatives. That's true, but he can marry anybody else. Her issur is much greater.
But when we talked about when the man says, "I gave her kiddushin,"
right?
And she denies it. We said he's prohibited to marry her relatives.
I understand.
She's not. So this is an example. When in a case where a guy in Beis Din says, "I owe the guy $1,000," there's no liability to anybody else. But here, through this hodah, they're answering on both of themselves relatives. So other people are being affected. So that's why Rav Kahana says we don't. It's ein chosheshin lekidushin for both of them.
Her issur is much greater. His issur is just on her relatives. Her issur is on the whole world.
Okay, but Rashi says kroy voiseh nesru bo, ukrovav nesrim bo. It doesn't say like you, Rashi.
All right.
It says they're each answering at least, meaning at a minimum, they're answering each other. Remember we said the case.
I'm just making a point that I think her issur is much greater.
Okay. Marzut Rav Ada Saba. Mari Bar Isser Polig Nechsai Badi Adoni. Marzutra and Mar Bar Isser, they divided assets between them without Eidim. Also Kamei Ravash. Amrule al Pishnei Eidim Yakum Dover, Rachmana. The Torah says that usually for money cases, you need 2 Eidim. And why do you need 2 Eidim? For example, let's say they want to go back on the deal. They can't. Or somebody was, oh, it never happened. We need Eidim to prevent that from being said. So they came to Rav Ashi and said, Anan lo hadri, we are not going to go back on what we did. So we don't need Eidim. Odilma lo makayma milsa ela beside. We're analyzing what really is testimony needed for. Is it for Amisa Sadvarim? Just to make sure that nobody can lie? Or is procedurally, they have to be there? because procedurally it says al pishnai made him yakum dover as a civil procedure mechanism, and not just as necessarily to avoid people from lying. So it's a very important question. Armeluhu lo ivru sadi el l'shakri. Witnesses were created because of liars. And therefore, what Rav Ashi was saying, if there's no debate between the two parties, it should be okay. We don't need the two Eidim to make it sort of from a procedural point of view. And he was basically saying, if you two agree, you don't need Eidim.
Because they're not hurting each other over here. They're agreeing. When it comes to Kiddushin, it's a different story. You're hurting the one person more than the other.
So the Rambam says, Kol ha-kinyonim niknin ba'ofen haroi l'chol kinyan ve'in tzorch shiyul sham eidim.
Right.
We make a kinyan with each other. I take something from Walter with Meshicha. It works without Eidim. That's what the Rambam says.
Right.
Shenigmar ha-kinyan gam below Eidim, kol sheshneim moedim bedover, einim yicholim laser behem. As long as they both agree this is what happened, that's what happened, and they can't go back on it. It's a big statement.
And
It's a big statement.
And the Beis Din will be Makayim then. Whereas as
And
in
Bezdin will be
Kiddushin,
Makayim it, even, but it could have been.
it's a
Rav Ashi
mechanism
could
for
have
the
answered.
Beis Din.
Rav Ashi could have answered, no. In order for a procedure to happen halachically, there has to be two Eidim there. But Rav Ashi
Yeah, but we
didn't
learned
answer
in
that.
the Gemara before that if you're hurting somebody else, if you did it, so that's when you're not allowed to do it. But yeah, that they're not hurting each other, they made the deal together. Whereas in Kiddushin, it's different. Even though you learn Kiddushin out of Mischa, you learn Kiddushin from the same thing. You learn Kiddushin that you need al pi shnei eidim yakum davar. It's a different thing. It's a different possibility.
By Kiddushin, we've learned it's no Kiddushin without two Eidim. Amar Abaya. We are now in the sugya deeply of Eid Echad. There's a lot of Jewish law that is established with one Eid, not two. So Amar Abaya. Amar lo Eid Echad achal tachel. A person says to his friend, you know, I saw you eat chalev. V'halo shosek. And the guy doesn't argue. So neman. So that aid is believed, and the person therefore has to bring a korban chatas. If you eat chalev b'mezid, you get koris. If you eat chalev b'shogeg, you bring a korban. So based on the testimony of an eid echad, without hakchasha, without argument by the person that he testifies about, he would be mechayev a korban.
Sorry, but that's because it's Eid Echad Neman Beisurin. This is an Iso.
Okay.
So we have a different. That's not the same as Al Pi Shnei Edim Yakum Davar, because we know Al Pi Eid Echad, you're allowed to Isurin are allowed with Al Pi Echad.
So we'll see. So we're going to go through it step by step. Right now, at least requiring a korban can be established through Eid Echad. And we'll see what cannot be established with Eid Echad. Usually mumminess, right? To owe money unless the person admits it himself. Like we said, a hodah of one of the litigants is kameya edim dami. So if one, I go to Bez, I say, Reuven, you owe me $1,000. And Reuven admits, it's like having 100 edim. Hodah Spaldin is Kameya Edim Dami, even though it's only one person testifying. But we have to keep that in mind. It's this, okay. So, but normally, in order to schlep money from somebody who's protesting, you need Shnei Edim, because it's V'al Pishnayim Edim Yakum Dov. Similarly, in Dvarim of Erva, prohibiting a woman that she's a Eshesish or a Zona which would prevent her from marrying a Kohen, or anything like that, that cannot be established with one aid. That requires two aid. So either a Dvar Erva or Dvar Mama. Now, Tana Tuna, Amar lo Eidech Achalta Chelim. The Halo Amar lo Achalti Potter. So if a guy comes to Ruvain and says, you ate Chelim, and the guy disagrees, I did not. So he doesn't have to bring a korban. He only has to bring a korban if he is silent, if he doesn't disagree. Okay. Taima de Amar lo Achalti. So the Gemara is medayik that he actually said, I didn't eat. If he's quiet, ha'ishtik, he's believed, which is similar to what Abaya said. Okay. Amar Abaya. Amar lo eid echad nitmu torasech. An aid comes to her and says, I saw your food, which you thought was tahor, but a dead sheretz fell on it, and it's tamei. The halal, the guy who owns the food, shoisek neman. So the eid echad is neman, and the food is tamei. The tanatuna eid echad omer nitmu, the haloi omer loy nitmu potter, because he argued. Taima do omer loy nitmu, ha'ishtik me'emin. So again, if he's quiet, it's a baya. We paskin like both of these cases. Amar Abaya. Amar lo eid echad shorcha nirba. Your animal, someone had relations with the animal. Now, an animal, if there were two eidim that saw the animal having relations with a human being, you kill the animal with skila. So you cannot kill the animal with only one aid. But the one aid will assur you from offering that animal as a korban. Adam ki yakriv mikem mina behema prat le nirba. One of the first Rashis in Vayikru. So the one aid, if the owner of the shore doesn't argue, is shoisek nema. Tanatuna shenevda ba'aveira, an animal that sexuality was committed with it, or shehemis. Now, an animal that gores and kills, so is also put to death if there's two aidim. But if you only have one aid that the animal killed somebody, al pi eid echad, or al pi bailim, let's say the bailim admit, so nema. So he's believed. Now, hi al pi eid echad hechidami. Ida kamoidi bailim, if the bailim agreed, I do al pi bailim. What? That's already al pi bailim. They already said it. Elalav deshasik. So, meaning when he's quiet, we believe him as when he didn't argue with the aid that said it was nearby. Okay. The question is, why did I need multiple cases like this? Why can't I learn one from the other? More says tricha. Yeshmerach kamaisa. The case of you ate chelef. So maybe over there we'll say, Ilav de kimle benafshe de ovad. If he wasn't sure by himself, the guy, that he had done the Aveira, Chulin Bazar Lavim. He wouldn't just bring an animal to the Beis Hamikdash, because you bring Chulin, if you really weren't required to bring a Chatas, you're bringing Chulin Bazara. That's a very bad sin. So he would protest. He didn't protest. So maybe there, by the case of Chalev, which brings a korban, that's why we believe it. Aval nitmu torasecha, and he was silent when it was claimed that his food was tamei. Meimer Amrina, maybe we'll say, hi, the Shosik, the fact that he didn't argue, because the Sov, it's not a big loss. Chazi lebi beitumoso. You know what? I can eat this food when I'm tamei. Not a big loss. So I had to be told that even though it's not a big loss, the aid is believed to say it's tamei. He wouldn't be quiet if it was any loss. And if we would have been told the case only of nitmu torasecha. So the kamafsi be made torasa. Must, because there he didn't protest because otherwise he's losing out. I will show a near, but maybe Amar Kola Shvorim, Lav Lagabe Mizbech. I don't need to bring every ox as a corpse. It's not a big loss. And maybe that's why he's silent. He doesn't care. So you have to be told that no, his silence means something, and it becomes usher as a korban. Tzricha. We're on Samech Vav, Mario, if you didn't switch. We're on 66 now. Iboiluhu. These are very interesting halachas coming up. A person goes to a man's husband, a person goes to a husband and says, Ishto zinsa be'edecha. Your wife committed adultery, but there's only one aid. And v'shoisik. And the Baal is quiet, doesn't argue. Amr Abaya, Nemar. Abaya says he's believed. Rava Amar Eino Nem. Rava says he's not believed. Why? Havi Davar Shebe'erva. This is involve an erva case. Can he live with his wife? Can he not live with his wife? And Ein Davar Shebe'erva Pachos Mishnah.
Do we learn
any case involving this kind of erva needs two eidim.
Ernie, do we learn shtika kodah dami? Do we learn this from the Gemara? Is that where we learn it out of?
Well, that has to do in Baba Kama when there's a back and forth between you owe me money and the back.
Yeah, but
here we're believing the aid with his shasika.
Yeah, so
the Gemara doesn't use that language here.
Yeah,
it's going to use that language in Baba Kama when it comes to
the same concept. Though.
It's a similar concept. Now here, this case is not. Rav is saying Eid Echad doesn't work by Dvarim Shebe'erva. And let's go weiter before we learn the halach.
Sorry, could be davar erva is because you're hurting other people. When you're not hurting other people, right? So then you need shteidim. When you're hurting other people, you disturb. When you do say somebody's be'erva, you're actually hurting other people. Once you hurt other people, you always need shteidim. That seems to be the concept.
Amar Abayim and Aminallah. Where do we see this svara? Listen to this case. There was a blind person who used to be mechazer the Mishnayos in front of Mar Shmuel. The blind person was late to coming to the yeshiva. Shmuel sent a shaliach to go to his house to help him. Maybe he's going to come late because he needs help. The shliach went to the Iver's house through one road, and the Iver came to the yeshiva through a different road. They didn't meet each other, and therefore the shaliach that Shmuel sent got to his house. He also shaliach Omar she'ishto zinsa. When the shliach came back, he told the blind person, I saw your wife committing adultery. Osla kamei Mar Shmuel. The blind person came to Shmuel to ask a shayla. Does he have to rely on this testimony? And is he not allowed? A wife that commits znus, you're not allowed to live with her anymore. It's usher.
Is this a suffix because it's Eid Echad or because he's blind?
Eid Echad. No, the shaliach came back and told the blind person,
Uh-huh.
when I came to your house the Shmuel sent me to your house to come get you. You weren't there, but I saw your wife being mizana with somebody else. And then the shaliach come back and tells the Iver what had happened. So the Iver wanted to know from Shul, what's the din? Does he have to separate from his wife because of, now if there's two Eidim, of course, that's the din. He wouldn't
What's
be
the
able to live with his
nafkamina
wife.
that he's an Iver? I mean, who cares?
It just happened to be the case because there is no nafkamina yet.
Okay.
There's no nafkamina in this case. Amr lay. So listen, lacha zil afka. If you believe this aid, as if there were two aidim, you have to divorce your wife. V'ilo lo tafik. And if you don't believe him, you don't have to divorce your wife. Now, my love, what does this mean? Who does it mean? Do you trust him as an aid kosher, that he's not a gazlan? Meaning he's not posel eidus? And if he's an aid kosher, you'd have to rely on him? And that might be a source for us that an aid echad is kosher even l'dvar erva. But Rava understands the Gemara differently, that the kavan of Shmuel was trey zil afka. If you have ne'emanus in this guy, like he was two eidim, he's a very chosh of a guy, and you believe him, then you divorce. V'ilo lo tafka. And that's where Rava learns the halacha that dvar erva you cannot do unless you have two eidim. Now,
I don't understand. So what if somebody's a big guy and he says this, so then you believe him? I mean,
if you believe him, it depends on you. If this is someone you normally would believe,
but the Beis Din has to believe.
no, you have to believe him. Shmuel told the Iver, it's up to you. If you believe him, divorce your wife. If you don't believe him, you don't have to divorce her.
But
It's
that's on the davar erva. You believing one person. It's against. Can you tell me what the halacha is?
And he gets the ksuba, and she gets the ksuba.
But I understand. But can you tell me where that?
Listen, think about it. If this is Rav
Well,
Moshe,
that's what you back to what Kenny said, because Kenny said obviously it's a blind person. That's why they use the blind person over here.
No, it makes no difference if it was blind. Meaning, if it was, let's say Rav Moshe Feinstein came and told you. So it's someone you would probably believe. You wouldn't want it, you'd be committing an aveira if you lived with your wife who was mezaneh. So, but not to cause her any problem, she gets her ksuba. Normally, biznus, she wouldn't get her ksuba. Because she committed an aveira. So it makes sense. But if it's some guy, like a joke, I won't even mention names. Some guy in our shul comes and tells you a story, and you wouldn't believe him nine times out of 10 on anything he says. So you're not required to divorce her.
You sure you don't want to give out names?
Okay. Let's see what the halacha says. Hey deidechad v'amar lo zinsa ishtecha v'hi shosekes, and she does not protest. Im ha'ed naman be'enav v'daita semechas alav kishnayim. If this is an upright person, he relies on them as if two people. Asurala. The woman is usher to him. V'yoytzi v'yiten ksuba. He has to divorce her and give her the ksuba. But v'im lav muteresla. If none of these things apply, if he doesn't believe her, if he doesn't believe the aid, he doesn't have to divorce her. Kosav Ramah, shedavka shemamin le'aid b'chol davar. So, for example, Eino yochel lismoch alav v'meinu makiro. Beinamin, if you don't know this person, afilu sheid muchzik b'keishus v'chasidus, but aval imamin lo rak b'dover zeh. Let's say mishum she'ishto chashur. Let's say he was suspicious of his wife. Eino neseres mishum zeh. That would not be enough to usher her. Okay, so that's the halacha. We continue. Amar Rabbi Meno Amin Allah. The Tanya. This is a very interesting story. Ma'aseh b'Yanai HaMelech. In the times of the Chashmonaim, Bayis Sheni, the later Chashmonai kings were Rishonim. Yanai HaMelech was one of these Rishonim. Shalach Kochle Shebamidbar. He went to the desert. V'kibei Sham Shishim Krachim. He conquered 60 cities. V'chazraso hayash samech simcha g'doyla. He was very happy over the victory. V'kar l'chol chachmei Yisrael. He called all the chachamim. Amar lehem avoseinu hayu oichlim meluchim bizman shayu asukim v'vin beis hamikdash. Our forefathers ate very poorly during Bayis Sheni when they were poor. They ate just like salted fish to remind themselves that even their fathers were poor. But that's what they gave as a haidah for Beis Hamikdash. We're going to eat the same thing. They put the sardines or the herring on tables of gold. There was an evil man. Elazar ben Puirishmo. Elazar ben Puir Yana Melech. He told Yana Melech, Libam shall prushim alecha. The Chachamim hate you. Uma ese. How am I going to prove that? So the evil guy told him, Hakem lahem b'tzitz shebeinei necha. Yana Melech was a Chashmonai. He was a kohen. So he also wore the tzitz. And there was a shame on Meforish, shame of Hashem on the tzitz. Yana Melech also served as the Kohen Gadol. Hekim lam b'tzitz shebeinei einav. So he made them take a shvua with the tzitz. Hayasham zakin echad v'Yehuda ben Gedidya shmo. There was a certain Talmid Chacham Yehuda. V'yarmi Yehuda ben Gedidya liYanai Melech. Yanai Melech. Rav l'cha keser malchus. Hanach keser kunul zar shalarim. Don't you have enough crowns? You're the king. Leave the kahuna to the ancestry of Aaron. What did he mean? Shayu oimrim imo shel nishbis b'modin. The mother of Yanai had been taken captive by pirates in Modi'in. And therefore he's a apostle de kakuna. He's not a kohen kosher. He was basically giving him a dig that Yana Melech, you shouldn't be wearing the tzitz. You're a halal. However, yivukasha davar v'lo nimtza. They tried to find witnesses regarding this episode, regarding Yana Melech's mother, but they couldn't find witnesses. The Yibad l'chachmei Yisrael b'zam. So this was the moment when Yana Melech hated and separated all the Talmidei Chachamim from him. Vayomer Elazar ben Puri Yana Melech, Yana Melech, Hedyot should be Yisrael kachu dino. If, forget about a Melech, if it was a regular Poshet Jew who made such a bad claim against somebody, V'ata Melech v'kohen gadol kachu dincha, you're not going to do anything else to the Chachamim? So Umayas, so Yana Melech said, what should I do? So this Elazar said, Imata shomei latzasi, roim saying, destroy them. So Yana Melech said, what if I destroy them? Torah matei aleh. What's going to happen to the Torah? So this Eliezer ben Puria said, "Arei kruchu menachos b'keren zavis." The Torah is in the corner. Kol harotze lilmod yavo v'yilmod. We don't need chachamim. On Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak miyad nizrika bominus. This is when Yanai Melech flipped and became a heretic. Davale lemeimar tinich Torah shebechsaf. Fine. Maybe the written Torah is in the corner and anybody can learn that. Torah Shabbat Peh Mai. Torah Shabbat Peh has been coming down from the Chachamim generation to generation. Who's going to be able to teach them? Miyad v'tot Yisrael yedei Elazar ben Puria v'yardu kol Chachmei Yisrael. Yanai Melech killed every Chacham and Chacham except one. Haya oilam mishtoim ad shebashimon ben Shetach. He actually ran away to Egypt, and eventually his sister Shlom Tzion called her back when things were okay for him. That's the Barais. Now, Heichi Domi, how did they get rid of this tale about Yanai Melech's mother? If there were two witnesses that said the mother was taken prisoner, but Beitrei Amri Lo Ishtaboy, but there were two witnesses who were makhish and said, no, she wasn't taken prisoner. So then the Shmua, my chaz is the Samchazani. Why would you rely on one set, rely on the other set? And therefore, we wouldn't have been able to say Yivukash Hadavar V'lo Nimtza. It would have been besofik. Ella must be, it was Eid Echad, that there was one aid that said the mother was taken prisoner, and then two witnesses came and said she wasn't. The Taima, why wasn't the Eid Echad believed? Because the Kamakish Lebeitrei, because there were two against him. Halav Hachi Mehemen. This is the debate between Abai and Rava, whether an Eid Echad is Neman by Dvarim Shebe'erva. Rava said no. Abai says yes, and Abai wants to say from this Gemara Zaraya that an Eid Echad would have been Neman. Rava says there's no proof from here. La'olam treu trei was 2 verses 2. Amar Vacha bar Rav Manyuni be'edei azama. The second Eidim were not who gave different testimony, but they were Eidei Azama who said that the first Eidim were with us. At 1 o'clock on Monday, they were with us in Disneyland. And therefore the whole Eidus goes away. That's why it was said, no riot to Abaya. V-boy Seima, this is like Rav Yitzchak, Shem Rav Yitzchak, Shivcha Chichnusi Taktel. That instead of the mother of Yanai, it was a Shivcha. That they saw that they were going to take Yanai's mother prisoner, and they put a Shivcha instead. The second group of Eidim said, the first group of Eidim said that the mother was taken prisoner. The second group of Eidim said, no, was not the mother, they had snuck a Shivcha in. And therefore, the Eidim of the first one went completely away. Okay. So you see, this is an important sugya of Eid Echad. Okay, so tomorrow,
very nice.
Tomorrow back to 7:30. Tomorrow we'll learn at 7:30.
Great shit.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Night, everybody.